Hi, I'm Josh Gibbs. I'm the catering manager here for City Market, and I'd like to introduce you to a fantastic, fun fall dish. We're going to make butternut squash risotto stuffed pumpkins. All right, so we have these little mini pumpkins. They're called Jack B. Little pumpkins. Pretty tough, so we want to be real careful here. Keep your fingers out of the way. You might have to fight the knife through them a little bit. We want to get a nice clean top and bottom. Try to get to the seed cavity here. I just kind of twirl it and work it around in a circle, and then I can pull that out. And what I like to do is keep the seeds, because those are going to be part of the garnish when I'm finished here. I have my tops and my bottoms. They look great. Set those aside for the moment, and we'll move on to our butternut squash. It's a local squash from Palmacolla Farm. Cut it right at the top of where the seed cavity is. And I have this nice piece here, and I can peel these two pieces separately, very carefully with my knife, working towards the cutting board. So now I want to make a nice dice of this squash. What I like to do is square it off a little bit, so I have a flat side to work with. The shape isn't that important, but we're looking at approximately 3/8 of an inch wide dice. So I'll make my planks that wide. Squash to a mixing bowl. It's kosher salt and fresh ground pepper. We're just going to toss that up. I love wearing gloves in the kitchen. You may opt to use a spoon. All right, so now that I've got my pumpkins oiled and ready to go, and I've got my squash here, these should take almost the same amount of time, because I'm looking at the size of my dice here compared to my pumpkin. It's close and similar, so I'm hoping that we can get these all done at the same time. Might have to adjust a little bit. Made my own pumpkin pie spice. This is ground cinnamon, ground ginger, and in smaller parts, a little ground allspice, nutmeg, and tiny bit of ground cloves. So I'm going to use some of that. Sprinkle that on pretty liberally on the pumpkin. I'm going to start getting ready to cook the rice now. The first step is going to be to mince a shallot. If you don't have a shallot handy, you can use a little bit of white onion or a little bit of red onion. I try not to cook with the red onion so much, because it does turn a pretty weird shade of grayish purple. So I prefer the shallot or the white onion when I'm going to cook. Got our minced shallots. We'll move on to chopping sage. I've picked the sage leaves already just to save us a little time here. grows everywhere. Enormous patch. So I like to take these, lay them out about the same way, make a nice tight bundle. And again, using the curved part of the knife, make sure I go all the way through. You might have heard the term chiffonade. That's what I'm doing here, although I'll then go ahead and chop it afterwards a bit. Sage can be a little bit tough. I'm going to go ahead and put my little bit of sage leaves in there. We're going to quickly fry those. I have a little tray here ready to catch them. Doesn't take a long time. I'll set that aside for later. We really want that to be super tender. We want to introduce a little caramelization to it. We're going to take about half of that squash and a little bit of our stock, vegetable stock. Looks good, nice and smooth, not too runny. As our oil heats up, we're going to start with our shallots. And we're going to let those cook just until they get fragrant and start to really smell nice. But we're going to be careful with this rice. I'm going to teach you some pointers on risotto. So I've got 3 cups of arborio. Arborio rice is got a ratio of about 3 liquid to 1 part rice. It's going to be important when we get to our next ingredient here. My next ingredient is going to be white wine. Generally, I almost always use white wine in risotto. Not always. My ratio is about, I want to use about 1/6 or a half part of white wine as my liquid. White wine in, let that start to cook. So I'm going to start adding vegetable stock here. And again, I'm going to go with quite a bit at the beginning. You can see it's quite covered. I'm just going to let that start to simmer and cook on its own until I start to see the rice swelling up out of the liquid. At that point, I'll add a little bit more. The other thing I want to do here is I want to make sure that I've got just the right amount of seasoning, so I'll taste this now and then to make sure that it tastes just kind of like a nice salty broth, not too salty, just enough, because that's going to absorb into the rice and give you flavor in the end. You only really need to stir risotto when it's going to stick, and you'll feel that. You'll see the liquid start to reduce and the starchiness of the rice is going to make it want to stick to the pan. That's when you stir it. It takes about 20 minutes. Again, risotto is a method. Risotto is a cooking method for grains. It's technically not a dish itself. But with the risotto method, we don't add all the liquid at once. We add it a little bit at a time in stages. Again, a lot of people have told me over the years, oh, you need to add just a little bit and stir it in, and a little bit and stir it in. That's not really the case. I will add quite a bit of it at the beginning, let the rice start to cook, and when it really starts to get to the point where it's not done and the liquid is reduced, I'll add just a little bit more and a little bit more, but only towards the end of the cooking process. I'm going to go ahead and add our squash puree. This is what makes this a butternut squash risotto. A beautiful roasted, caramelized butternut squash. It's going to make this dish special. And bright orange for the season. Let that flavor cook right in there for about another 4 or 5 minutes and we'll be done. I want to start getting my garnish ready for the top of this dish now while that rice finishes. I got some black trumpet mushrooms. These are a version of related to the chanterelle mushroom. They look like little trumpets. These are a little mashed up because I use dried ones. When you can find them fresh, which is generally more in the springtime, They're wonderful, but they are hollow all the way through, so you want to tear them open and look inside and make sure you don't have any bugs or critters. So my saute pan gets hot. And a little bit of oil in there. I want to make sure this gets nice and hot. I don't want to add the still remaining diced squash to the pan because it's a starchy thing with some sugar, and if the pan isn't hot enough, it will stick, even in this non-stick pan. Again, we want to caramelize this a little bit, so we're going to keep it spread out. We don't want to pile it all up in one spot. Also add a little bit more of our shallot and our black trumpet mushrooms to that mixture. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start plating that. We're going to take pumpkins right in there in our pumpkin patch. Piping hot. Fill them a little bit overflowing. We want to be able to see them still, though. Go ahead and add our sauteed squash and mushrooms, make it look a little Halloween-like. Nice black of the mushrooms. Black and orange is Halloween, right? Scatter that around. And these are pumpkin seeds. And then to complete the pumpkin patch look, so our fried sage. Go ahead and put the tops back on our pumpkins. And there you have it. A pumpkin patch.